Good. It's 2 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to the session. Spend a little bit of time on security today. Chris and myself just have a general chat around what's important, what you should be looking out for, where you can find some of the things that we talk about. And then generally just, ultimately at the end of the day, try and transfer some knowledge. It's always important and it's always a good thing for us to be informed. Now we're going to run a number of these informative sessions, hopefully over a period of time. This is our third one. The first two, we had some guidance and help from Microsoft, and we'll continue that guidance and help as we move forward, and we'll start doing a little bit more around tips and tricks. We found somebody that's really good at presenting at Microsoft that can help us out in the next one, potentially. Having said that, we've also had a request to actually do something really special in about 4 weeks' time. I'll show you guys a new technology that we're working on. So I run a session on a Wednesday morning called Cuppa for internal people. I'm going to try and transfer it here. My cup of coffee. Thank you for joining us. Chris, welcome. And the rest of the team, welcome. Let's kick off. So I suppose today is all about security, and I'd really like to talk a little bit around some of the 5 best practices that Microsoft have released over a period of time to assist us. Chris, so although we're used to looking at making sure that we are secure from an on-premise perspective. We look at it from the face that we've got access control. We look at it that our doors are locked, our windows are closed, all that kind of stuff, right? But now we're moving our applications and our spaces into the cloud. And I'd assume that the landscape has changed a little bit insofar as that goes. So what would you say is the key element for us to have a look at in the network environment, in the applications environment, and in the access environment that we have in the software space in the cloud?
Thanks, Doug, and thanks everybody joining us, and thank you for your time. Doug, I would start out with 5 things first, and if you're looking at the 5 best practices for cloud and how to enable and increase your security posture, number 1 thing that we always look at is the first pillar of security, and that's to strengthen your access control. Now, strengthening your access control is, there's a myriad of principles and security things that can be implemented in like that, in that pillar. But number 1, what you look at passwords and, making passwords complex. It's a standard behavior that's implemented in most organizations, hopefully. But when we're looking at the strengthening of access control, we're trying to keep unwanted people, unwanted identities, obviously the teenagers from Korea and from Russia. We're trying to keep them out of our environment. And the first thing and the most critical implementation that you can do, not just on your 365 Azure Active Directory or any other environment, is multi-factor authentication. That's the start, the be-all and end-all of the starting of strengthening of your access control. If there's anything that I can implore the group of people here to have a look at, it's speak to your IT managers or speak to your head of IT, get your stakeholders involved, and just do it. Just implement the MFA. MFA in its entirety has got a myriad of protection utilities in it. And number 1, it is, that's it's a second level of authentication that's required from a user that wants to enter the domain of your organization. So it stops the phishing attacks, where phishing attacks are quite common these days. Actually, there's been a significant increase from what we've seen with our customers at the moment, from stolen credentials. Users in the organization clicking on a phishing email, and it pops up with a realistic-looking Office 365 username and login screen. The user then enters that username and password, and the hacker or the phisher on the other side collects those credentials and has got access to your domain. From there, they've got access to your Exchange Online, your SharePoint directories, whatever it may be. So in a nutshell, Doug, what I would off the cuff say for the strengthening of access controls, MFA, 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 and it's not that difficult to actually implement it in an organization as well.
Okay, Chris, if we have a look at kind of, it's good to, when we talk about this, it's really good at the end of the day to be able to it's good to be able to publish out how to do documents and things in this space. What is the kind of challenges that you've experienced in instituting or enabling a multi-factor authentication? I'm going to give you an example of something that I came across the other day. So I said to a customer, please, first thing you do is just introduce MFA. Just put in a second way, like an OTP or something in that line. And the guy's response to me was, yeah, but then what happens if I've lost my email? I've got my password to get into my email. For me, it's like, it's not about, that's not the only way to actually secure and get a two-tier authentication or multi-factor authentication implemented. What are some of the other things that we should be looking at?
So within the Microsoft technology space, and specifically in the Microsoft security space, when we're talking about multi-factor authentication, the emphasis is on the multi side. So multi-factor essentially, for those in the forum that not too familiar with it or haven't activated it yet, it's a second level of authentication that gets sent to your user when they're trying to access your organization's domain. Now, that second level of authentication can be an SMS with a one-time PIN, and most of us in the forum know. I mean, if you access your banking details, or you might want to make a payment, sometimes get an OTP via SMS, and that SMS can go to the phone. But an SMS with an OTP is not the only way of which you can implement multi-factor authentication. There are other tools such as, it can send an email in the event that you've lost your email. Microsoft requires another stage and authentication mechanism to be implemented as a backup, such as an SMS or an email. And if all else fails, and just to make your life so much easier, I would recommend installing the Microsoft Authenticator app. It's a application that's written by Microsoft. Then that when you are challenged on your dual factor authentication, you can go into the app and say, yes, this is me. So if you do lose the email, there's backup mechanisms to get that going. And also, I mean, if you've lost your password, guys, very easy, as I've shown you on the screen as well. It's available on all Office 365 and Microsoft 365 SKUs, from business all the way up to enterprise. You can very easily, as the screenshot here shows, go and select self-service password reset, and you can select it for all your users, and your users will be able to, when they go onto the portal or the login screen, go click forget password, and the 365 security mechanisms will take the users through the process of self-servicing their password resets.
Well, that's great news at the end of the day. But then how does that impact the second authentication level, Chris? Has it got a direct bearing, or is it just I've set my password again and your two-factor authentication stays in place, your OTP as an example?
So just back to back to what multi-factor authentication is. So multi-factor authentication, you've got the username and password, and then the system wants to know that it is indeed you. So once you've reset the password, it's going to take the normal process from the multi-factor authentication from that process going forward. So
cool. If you don't have to reset the second bit again. I mean, it's around simplicity and making sure that at least you know that the person that's accessing the environment is the right person.
100% correct. Yeah.
That kind of summarizes it quite nicely. Tell me, often get the question around, if we do a blanket policy, the MD is going to freak out. Like my boss is going to have something serious to say about this, because now he has to go into another tool or do something else that he needs to remember in order to get in. What would your kind of answer be to a person like that? I mean, I know it's and we all have them, right? I mean, we know them.
I've seen it in multiple organizations and customers, where specifically the C-suites or the big bosses don't want to get to passwords and too complicated authentication mechanisms or to log into the environment. So from a Microsoft 365 security perspective, there are alternatives to easing up the complexity of the sign-in process, and it doesn't distract or take away from the strengths of the access control that MFA gives you. But just in terms of that, alternative technologies to look at in terms of that is a technology that Microsoft have released about 18 months ago. We've deployed it even in the branch space, and it's called Windows Hello. Now, the Windows Hello principle of authenticating within the mechanism is biometric. Number one, it can do facial recognition. So if you've got a webcam on your laptop or an external webcam, it does a multi-point analysis on your biometric features on your face. It doesn't always recognize me, Doug, because of this skewness sometimes.
I see.
Yeah.
Headset. Fair enough.
So you can use facial recognition. You can use fingerprint analysis, and they've also recently now brought in pins, 6-digit or 8-digit pins that you can log into your laptop. That, as I say, does not distract and take away from the strength of MFA, but it's an alternative mechanism to ease the complexity for the CEOs and the CFOs that don't want to get into much. So yeah, it's a common request. Yeah.
So that's a good thing. For me, my rebuttal to somebody like that would be, well, you know how long our audit takes us? It's because our IT audit is predominantly a mess, and the auditors are looking for how we're securing our data, particularly around POPIA. Yeah. And remember, you, Mr. Director or C-suite person, you are also you're very responsible and could go to jail if you don't affect these control mechanisms. So, there's always a cost associated to this, and I think we underestimate having that discussion with C-suite. We can make it easier for them, but it's important that they understand the risk and liability that they're causing themselves.
Yeah. Well, so just to finish, before we finish, bounce off the topic, it's not that difficult, and it's a little bit of a change, but the return on the efforts that you put into this, it's just I mean, it covers your security score. I mean, we're going to talk about security scores just now, and how to increase your security score. In most instances, if you want to be improving your security score, if you just implement MFA or Windows Hello or biometric facial recognition, you're going to lift your default security score by 11-15% off the cuff. So.
I'd also like to thank the people posting questions on the chat. If we don't get to answer them in this little presentation, we will get back to you and we'll answer. Desmond, you had your hand up. Please just pop down the question in the chats and we'll get back to you. Please don't feel shy. We like to have it interactive, but like to also be cognizant of the time available to do these presos. There are vaults available for you to be able to, and Microsoft vaults available for you to be able to store your multiple passwords. The question that came in now, and we'll cover that with a nice little link and documentation on how to do that going forward. Chris, so we talk about zero trust, and we've spoken and exhausted that kind of subject right now. The idea behind it is we cannot trust anything. Yep. It doesn't matter whether it's a link, whether it's a document associated to an email, or anything that asks anybody in the world for a password or what your username is. It's just a plain and simple rule, and we need to continuously talk to our guys and educate our staff members weekly around, please don't click on this, please don't open up a document. Nobody in the world will ask you for your username and password, so just keep that static. That's a rule a new joiner, an old joiner, a medium joiner, I don't care. Just make sure that the people are trained up and notified of that, even if it's a weekly email that goes out, and set by your marketing to keep it fun. So I think from my perspective, then it's literally, okay, so where do we start? What do we look at? What have we got access to be able to help us on this road to make us more secure?
Okay, so that talks mostly to the second best practice, Doug, and that is your security posture. And good question. So where do we start? Where do we look? I mean, there's various mechanisms that you can employ, and you can go through CSAT cybersecurity assessments. You can get penetration testing done internally, externally. There's a bunch of mechanisms, but it's all very could sound very complicated and complex to get going. If you're talking,
I'm more worried about how expensive. I mean, always looking at the cost side to this. Yeah.
But from the Microsoft 365 security, well, I'd say actually from the Microsoft security space, because we work in the Azure space as well. Let's just call it Microsoft security space. There's three fundamental pillars, and I'm using the pillars again, but I would say facets that we use when engaging on a security engagement, or when we're advising somebody. There's three facets that you want to be looking at. Nice thing about what I'm about to show everybody here is it's readily available from your Microsoft 365 environment, from your Azure environment if you have it, and then from your endpoint environment as well. So number one, if you had to go do anything, go do the following. Go look at your security posture from the Microsoft 365 Security Admin Center. What you will see there, it's the URL, I think we can post after this, and we can put it in. It's security.microsoft.com. As I said, if you'll have some level of access on Exchange Online or a business standard or some level, Microsoft are going to give you some type of score there, which is called the Microsoft 365 Security Score. In this case, you'll see that the secure score, luckily for this customer, is up to 52.54%. And that's where you start. This is where you look, and this is where you get your first single-digit metric of how secure my environment is. So that's number one, what I use. Secondly, what I would suggest that you do, if you've got Azure services deployed, and I'll talk a little bit about which, if you don't have Azure services deployed, even if you don't have, the second thing that we have look there is the security posture, or the security score from an Azure Security Center perspective. Once again, Doug, one digit, one score, a key metric, nice utility to say to your C-suite guys, we are on 51%. We got some work to do, or yeah, we've done a lot of work in this environment. We are 91%. By the way, just in engagements that I've seen, we've seen secure scores go from 19% all the way up to 95%, which I've seen in the last few weeks. And then lastly, the third one you want to be looking at is your endpoint. So if you restructure a little bit more abstractly about what we're talking about here, we're addressing the cloud space, your cloud infrastructure. And we're addressing your Microsoft 365, the Azure Active Directory, the SharePoints, the Exchanges, the OneDrives, all of that, and securitizing or perimeterizing the security controls around that. And then lastly, the third one is the actual endpoint, and that's your phones, the phones that have got business mails on it, laptops that have got Outlook installed on that, and all of that. So in a large way, that's what we're addressing here, and that's where we pretty much start when we're engaging with security engagements.
Well, that's good stuff. So literally, so let's ask this: there are different tools and tool sets that we need to use to be able to look at where to start if we're looking at identity, data, hosts, and networking.
Yeah.
So and I'd assume that networking is catered for through devices that are in the cloud, like a FortiGate firewall.
Yes.
Am I correct? Okay, cool. And then this agent, I'm going to call it an agent, that runs to look at your security score in the cloud infrastructure space will pick up settings on that FortiGate that will go, excuse me, just change this policy, change that process. Because I see you've highlighted to explore your security posture and improve your score bits on this slide deck, which I'd assume uses the artificial intelligence built into the Microsoft security platform to help you and guide you without you having to get a security officer that's an expensive resource involved or a third party involved to get this done.
Look, number one, just what you said at the end is I would never, ever discount the need for a security officer or a security expert in your organization if you can afford it. If you can do it, then do it. But in terms of what you've just highlighted now, Doug, if you look at what I've highlighted here in terms of explore your security posture, improve your score, this in its own right has been the most exciting development from a security perspective within the 365 or the Microsoft security space. What they've done with this tooling is actually given you a roadmap. And a roadmap it's a very abstract concept, so allow me some poetic justice with this, or technical justice with it. But the tools in the back end here and the toolkit itself actually gives you the recommendations of what you need to do to up the score. So basic things like change your passwords every 30 days, and then once you go and you implement that vulnerability in your environment, the tool will go every 24 hours and it will go reevaluate, did you do it correctly or did you not do it correctly? And if you've done it correctly, your score goes up. And if you haven't done it correctly, it will obviously say, sorry, it's still a problem, try again, maybe like a
try this next, maybe
try this next
again.
Cool. Absolutely. And so and its richness, I'll end it there because I don't want to get stuck too much on it. I know we've got a lot to discuss here, but the third thing where when we were evaluating this technology a year and a half back and starting to deploy this to our customers, it's the third facet where this is next level type of I'd say bleeding edge stuff is these tools, everybody in the forum, it not just tells you what you need to fix. Okay, so it gives you your secure score. It tells you, okay, go fix MFA or go fix your password expiry policy. The third level where it takes to, it actually tells you how you can do it. So it'll tell you step 1, go log into your security defaults. Step 2, go do that. Step 3, go do that. 4, 5, 6. Pick OK. Once you've done that, it'll take 24 hours and it will tell you, great, good job, or try again.
Or do something else. So that's great news. So, and I think that this really at the end is probably where Microsoft's investment of approximately $1 billion per annum is starting to really show fruits. It's not just about, here's the indication, you're bad. It's going, here's the indication, you're bad. Have a look at how you can fix it, but also then gives you the how to. I think that's a phenomenal way to do it. Chris, talk to us a little bit around the fact that I'm running like multiple clouds, multiple engagements. So we're no longer narrowed down to, because we've picked Microsoft as the technology, that we only stick to that engagement. Talk to me a little bit about what you got on screen now.
So, Doug, excited I got, and I'm extremely passionate about this technology. I mean, you work with me on a daily basis. I live, breathe, and eat this stuff. One of the most groundbreaking changes that Microsoft made was that improve your security score and go do this. We'll show you how. We want you to be safe, etc. And the investment in the security graph, that $1 billion a month. The other thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is a tool called Azure Arc, and we were on the previous slide now where we were talking about your cloud infrastructure. So you got Azure Service, you got Azure VMs. You may even have AWS virtual machines or Google Cloud virtual machines. You could have VMware on premise and stuff like that. So that's your server infrastructure. now up until recently, and to say about a few months ago, the security score was only focused on cloud infrastructure. So virtual machines running in the cloud, hosted somewhere and all that, and then the 365 and then the endpoint. The fourth thing, and I, maybe lost my chain of thought here a little bit, but what really got me out of bed and gets me excited is the introduction of the fourth pillar in terms of securitizing and perimeterizing your infrastructure. So what Microsoft have done now with Azure Arc specifically is they have enabled you to deploy those security features and those improvement of your security scores. Measuring of your security score, if it's 53% or 70%, by introducing a plugin into Hyper-V, VMware. If I'm getting technical, I'm sorry, guys. If you've got a server running in AWS, if you've got a server running in Google Cloud, if you've got a server running in Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, it could even be a piece of physical tin running there in the kitchen, running your file server, your Exchange. You can now take this virtual LAN cable, go plug it into Azure, and get the same security scores, the same security recommendations, and the same security remediations as you would from a normal cloud implementation. And that is the fourth thing, that it takes your cloud best practices and it deploys it to on-premise. And yeah, maybe I should just not get too excited, because I can take up all my time in the session on the power, piece, yeah. On the power of this, yeah.
But I think for me the important bit is it no longer is based on just, let's call it one cloud.
Yeah.
It's not just a Microsoft tool. It's a tool that sits across multiple clouds that allows you to centrally understand what that landscape looks like, and then to actually affect remediation where required. Doesn't matter which cloud it's in. And I think that's phenomenally powerful.
And the value prop and to the customers and the people in the forum, the value in this tool is you get a single pane of glass from everywhere. From your 365 Active Directory, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your VMware environment, your AWS environment. It's all collected for you in one, and it gives you one secure score. So you simplification of security management and simplification from compliance management. I cannot implore the use of this tool more than enough. But I'm going to stop now before I take up all the time for this session.
Cool. Okay. I think one of the things is, this is cool. We've got the tool sets now. We've got the how-tos. We've got detail on how to. What about whose responsibility is it, and where does responsibility lie across the various clouds?
Right, so that takes us on to number 3, I think.
Yeah, secure the apps and data pillar. It's literally around that.
Secure apps and data. So layering a defense across identity, data, host, and networking. So, the common thread here is your application and your data that's addressed, and how you're addressing that. So, as I said, pillar number 3, secure apps and secure your data. And when I'm saying secure your data, a very common thing, and this happened to, Doug, it happened to you in the first month or two of lockdown, was it?
Yeah, it was in first month of lockdown.
Yeah, so you pressed your your alarm, and the thing beeped. It didn't beep, but you didn't notice, and it was jammed. The laptop was fortunately in the boot, got stolen out of the boot, and away the laptop went. So what's the problem with that situation? So, well, you've got company data, you've got email data, you've got SharePoint data that's been synchronized down to your laptop, and it's not encrypted. So, first principle there, in terms of secure apps and data, which is the third pillar, encrypt data at rest. So we talk about at rest data, in transit data. We specifically want to focus on that. When it comes to a laptop, you want to be sure that from a Microsoft security, and there's a lot of tooling available in the Intune and the endpoint tooling to encrypt laptops. What does that give us? So once somebody has taken the laptop out of the boot, and they take that hard drive out, there's no way they're going to be able to read the data on that hard drive without getting the encryption key, which is near impossible. It will take them hundreds of years to decrypt, and I don't think that's the purpose of that in the first place.
Yeah.
Second one you also want to look at is on your file servers. Very, very vulnerable. Whether your file server is on premise or in the VMware cloud, or even in the Azure space, is to make sure that those the data at rest is encrypted. So that's key number one. So yeah. Then you're talking about shared responsibilities, and in the shared responsibility space, so what you can, in terms of securing apps and data, and the multiple responsibilities of that. And I didn't mention it previously in the first few slides, was this with Microsoft can give you a whole bunch of tooling. It can give you ways to encrypt devices, reporting on your on-premise infrastructure. The security toolkit is quite advanced, and it's quite elaborate in its offering. But the last portion of that is unfortunately where a lot of us don't realize that we've got a responsibility in maintaining an organization's security as well. And
as end users, Chris?
As in the person, the call center agent, maybe the admin lady, or even the middle management or the executive that receives an email that says, "Thank you for your payment," or "We'd just like to confirm your your banking details, please," and whatever it may be. You know what I'm talking about for the phishing account. There's a certain level of responsibility that's on the customer or the organization itself to educate the stakeholders and the users within the environment in what we call security awareness and security training exercises, generally from compliance frameworks like POPIA. I don't think even POPIA is the compliance framework. It's not really POPIA, but the compliance frameworks that support the POPIA implementations and stuff like that recommend that you do that every 6 months. So get somebody in, get some online or training material, how to identify a phishing mail.
Because I'd assume they evolved the same way as what the technology is evolving at this present moment in time.
No, well, actually, the odd thing with this is that where hacking used to be, I'm not talking about the TransUnion hack, because that took a very high level of skill to get into that, but or not apparently. But it's not. You don't need a Linux degree or BSc computer science degree these days to hack. You really don't. Yeah. You can literally log into the dark web these days and go buy a bunch, 100,000 usernames and passwords, and go and try that in an organization. If you haven't got MFA involved, your passwords out there, you're going to get hacked, right? Yeah. So what you're also seeing on that space, it's teenagers, these guys, bored teenagers that are entering domains organizations. And so the responsibility is, if you get an email like that or you get something like that, just make sure that your users in your organization are trained. They know how to look out for things and doing common sense things. Not opening up emails from @gmail.com with a bunch of digits. There's easy ways of identifying it.
Yeah, and I think this talks a little bit to a question we had just a short while back around, should this be a separate role within the organization? Should we outsource? So I think if I can answer that question along these lines, it's definitely have a security officer in place. Yeah. That security officer is in charge of educating your people internally, but also keeping an active eye on your security score. We have had a customer move from 19% to 95% back down to 70% with one change affected in their environment. And you want to consistently be up to date with what that is, but that's not the point. The point is to put in play the remediation that's required in order to continuously manage and maintain that security posture. Then it would be prudent on a regular basis as regular as what you want to make it, to try a pen test or try an alternative external assault on your business, somebody you trust, in order to see to what extent you are being effective in your training, in your education, and in the way in which you've applied the recommendations made by the tool sets. That would be my recommendation for you.
100%. And review these scores every single week. I mean, you don't need a security officer to just log into security.microsoft.com and go, look, oh dear, why suddenly am I on 21% and I wasn't 52%, you know? And just review it regularly. Keep an eye on it, and it's worth the effort. I mean, it's a lot. The return on effort by reviewing that is a lot less, or I would say a lot less costly than actually sitting in a predicament.
Chris, I think from our side, and just something to highlight or mention, is that we often talk about the platform as a service, the infrastructure as a service, the software as a service. These are all out-of-the-box type solutions. I believe that there is some additional assistance for developers, because developers will often utilize, like, you know, spin me up a quick service somewhere. I mean, mostly at home, something that they pre-built themselves, got like a half a wonky OS, a little bit of DB database in there, and then has all these dev tools on top of it. What would you recommend in instances like that? Is there something that organizations can do to help themselves in that space as well?
Yes, there's lots we can recommend about that, but I think to take the discussion further, or to start off the discussion, it's just important to see how the cloud space and the securitization and the parameterization of the cloud space is working at the moment, you know, and it's the whole the whole ambits of am I running my applications, my line of business applications? Now, line of business applications be your ERP system. It could be your payroll system. It could be leave requests, whatever it may be, HR, whatever it may be, right? So they're either running on-premise infrastructure in the cloud as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and then strictly speaking, software as a service. Now, in those four ways of deploying it, the separation of responsibilities is on a sliding scale. The first one, obviously, on-premise. If you think about it, if I'm putting down a new server that's going to be running my pastel, my VIP payroll, whatever it may be, or Sage, you are responsible for application data, runtime, middleware, OS, virtualization, server, storage, networking, and maintenance, and updates, and. So the management overhead and the management effort involved in having something like a line of business application on-premise is way more than it would be to obviously take this and go put it into a virtual machine that's running on the cloud. Now, the effort gets less because suddenly now it's running in the cloud, and now I don't have to worry about my virtualization, my server, storage, and networking. All I'm really worrying about is this top layer here. And now, with the advent of the new DevOps and the ways that Microsoft are developing the cloud services, and I'm getting to the developer portion and the open sources, platform as a services, and these are things like which we can have hours of discussions with. But with platform as a services, now suddenly all that you are focusing on, all that you are actually worried about, is the business application of your service. So you, from a web application, you're making sure that the code is correctly done, and you've got proper SDLCs. You're not worrying about any one of these at the bottom layers here. It's all taken care for you by the cloud provider. In this case, Azure or Microsoft Azure. They take responsibility. Now, when it gets translated to the security portion of that, it's even a bigger plus, because these are the Microsoft engineers that are looking after your web applications and such. Not that there's no front-end facing securitization that has to be done, but I'm saying the management effort is much, much less on this. Now, just lastly, the last thing I would just recommend on the developer portion is the use of open source tooling. I've got nothing against open source tools. I mean, it saves all of us a lot of money. in terms of line of business applications and stuff that we don't really have to expatiate more on. But as you said, rightly said, that just check your open source provider is vetted. Good example is WordPress, where it was a few years back. They have recently, done a lot of fixes on those open stuff. But a good example is that they left a lot of holes in that, and their main concern was just to get the content out to the community, and not so much about the security. And yeah, as I say, make sure you've got an SLA with your software provider as well.
And then what's quite cool is that there's security development lifecycle tools that Microsoft incorporates into their product stack that can run alongside these self-developed applications and have a look at where and how to establish vulnerabilities. So really, really cool. At the end of the day, that even the developers are now starting to have to become a little bit more security orientated and focused.
Yeah.
And again, relates back down to the question, let's call it the major influx of the security risks associated to the amount of people that can now just for $2 buy databases of activity and really call it influence and affect a security threat. A disgruntled employee, a student that's got too much time on their hands. These are the people that are affecting these Trojans and threats at the moment. It's no longer those big businesses in China or in the USSR that have businesses orientated around this. It's not just anybody that has a half a minute or two to spare on the dark cloud, black cloud, what do you call it?
the dark web.
The dark web. That
Don't
causes us pain. Don't go there. No, I'll never, Chris. I'm too scared. Imagine I open up a vulnerability and it gets into my computer. That would be nasty. So literally at the end of the day, I suppose, is there anything else you want to share insofar as making sure that we deal with some of the other pillars around this? I suppose it's literally around making sure that we're abreast of what to mitigate. Talk to me a little bit about what you got reflecting now.
So we've got another about, I think, 5-7 minutes, which we can speak about the following slide, and then I think we can you can start looking at the questions.
Cool.
I'd like to see if we can get some more questions out of the forum here, and address that. But right, so we've strengthened access control, apps and data, and likes. And we're working on the DevOps and the shared responsibility. The last thing is, we know our security score by utilizing the right tools, guys. It's not difficult. It's not difficult to go improve your score. It's not difficult to go implement it. It's a guided process. I saw a question there just now. If you don't know how to do it, reach out and for help. But the last one here, and most importantly, is like, I'm once again losing my thread a bit. My apologies, but we've worked on security score from the Microsoft 365 environment. We've looked at the Azure security. We've looked at Azure Arc and getting your infrastructure all sorted out, and collecting all this information. So that's all good and well, but if you're not doing anything with it, then I reckon then we are just going to be running around in circles. So the last one that you want to be doing, and what you, as a best practice, want to be implementing in your organization, is to mitigate your threats. Because if you know about a threat, then you want to be killing the threat, and you want to be plugging the hole wherever that may be inside your organization. So the three key words here are, under the mitigate threats, is to protect, which we've now got under wraps now with the first 25 minutes of the organization.
The presentation. Yeah.
The presentation. The second one is to detect. So we've detected it, and now we want to respond and prevent. So in Microsoft security, the last line of defense, what I would recommend on that level, is to look at a SIEM system. Now, if you do not know what a SIEM system is, the short of it is security, incident, and event management system. So effectively, it's your security guard that walks around your virtualization environment. It's your security guard that's looking at your SharePoint. It's looking at all these things that we've plugged in, and it's trying to do analytics on all that data to verify whether somebody who's logging in now suddenly from Korea, or somebody's trying to log in from Brazil, that looks suspicious. Okay, and what the purpose of that then obviously is to respond to the threat. So number one, squash it if it can. If it can't, notify you as the security officer or the IT manager or the CEO, CFO. Listen, somebody's trying to get in. I would wake up now. And I say wake up because I'll tell you now how this tool can wake you up, but be aware something's happening in your environment that you know about and you need to respond to very, very quickly. It's a tool in the Azure toolkit called Azure Sentinel. It can plug into your FortiGates, Barracudas, Sophos devices, Azure Active Directory. It plugs into your on-premise VMware, wherever it was. And its main purpose is to notify you of a threat, and it notifies you it can wake you up via phone call, or it can send you an SMS or email. And the reason why it would be able to send you give you a phone call is because threats don't happen at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They typically happen 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's Doug. It's probably me in a nutshell in all of that.
Lekker.
And what would be my take on the 5 best practices for cloud security?
Okay, thanks, Chris. So just to kind of summarize quickly, get to know security posture, get an assessment done, deploy multi-factor authentication, extend your security to endpoints. So deploy resources like Endpoint Manager. Most of these are available on your CSP portal or through your CSP partner.
100%.
Use the tools and deploy the prioritizations recommended, guys. It is critical that we get to that point. Have and look at the SIEM system. Never underestimate the importance of maintaining and looking at your firewall protection regularly, and that you can do through the tool sets we've shown you. Enable denial of service protection. There are how-to documents on that makes it extremely easy for even a novice like me in the IT environment to set it up. And then if you're running one single network, start looking at how you can subdivide that network into subnets in order to ensure that if there are break-ins into the environment, that you're covered. Networking, endpoints, applications, and servers. To that end, I'd like to thank you all for your time. Let's just run through a question or two. Chris, if you'd like to take it from the top. I know there are a couple coming through, and maybe you can just reiterate. I've tried to answer one or two as we moved along.
Sure. All right. So I think the first one was about from Trevor Duckworth. You should be showing the manual enabling of per user MFA for changing over manageability. Please never click security defaults on existing environment. Pure chaos. Depends on the size of depends on the size of your organization. When I said Trevor that if you want to take a blanket approach, you can enable security defaults. Unfortunately, that's going to give you the SMS portion of the security, but it kind of agreed. If you've got a large organization, just don't go click security defaults. It can cause chaos for extended users. And my recommendation on that would be rather do that for smaller organizations. By the way, a lot of the Microsoft subscriptions these days that are being created from scratch have got security defaults enabled by default. The system is something Microsoft are doing as part of the security rollouts and processes when they create new tenants. If you have many passwords and how do you save these passwords without them being stolen? I use OnePass and LastPass Manager. There's a lot of tools out there, very reliable, secure tools. I know some of them, just do your research on some of them. Some of them have been compromised, but just as I said, just do your proper research. They can encrypt your passwords on a browser-based level, and you can use it going forward for that purpose.
Just watch out for the Google store. There's one that every time you go in, it asks you to update and click. That's some troubles insofar as managing that environment. Not bad, but not the greatest. There are better.
Okay. Cool. Just in terms of should this be a dedicated role or could this be outsourced with what is the best approach? Now that is a very, 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 very good question, and I'll tell you why. Because in small organizations, you don't always have the budgets or the skill set or the talents onboarded inside an IT team to run with security. You have got dedicated individuals looking at your infrastructure. Sometimes it's a combined role, and individuals are taking on that. So I'll take this in terms of what I've shown you guys in terms of knowing what your security score is, clicking improve score, and letting the tool help you from that perspective in remediating your most low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities in a 365 environment or an Azure Active Directory or whatever it may be. When it comes to the higher level networking things, yes, my recommendation would be if you're configuring a FortiGate, leave it to the Vox guys. If you're perimeterizing or you're configuring layer 3 switches, get it to your security and outsource those type of things. But I think the message also to a large extent is there's a lot of enablement in the tools up until a point for a large organization, I would say, maybe for a smaller organization, maybe outsource a lot of that responsibility to a partner that knows about the toolkits. So did I answer that coherently? Thank you for your questions. If you don't get
Chris, let me go to the next one quickly. What's your take on RMM tools, Enable, Pulseway? We have found this has helped hugely with monitoring and endpoint protections.
So yeah, Rapid7, SolarWinds, all of that. If you've got it deployed, if you've invested in it, by all means, add as much security to your existing environment as possible. By no means am I saying that that the Microsoft tooling is a outright silver bullet for everything. What I've merely tried to show you today is to make the best of your existing investment in your 365 environment or your Azure environment, or how you can extend that investment into an on-prem environment. If you've got EMS deployed, or if you've got SolarWinds deployed, by all means, keep it secure, keep it bedded down, and I've got no issues with that. From an endpoint protection, I would say if you don't have endpoint protection in place, maybe it's time to look at deploying Intune. But yeah, I would not badmouth any one of the other security tools or things out there. So
cool. And then I suppose finally, educate. We always miss out that people's aspect, and they are our biggest security risk. They'll click on stuff they shouldn't click on, and it's as simple as that. We do, as Braintree and as Vox, we do a 6-monthly training session where you actually sign your life away, and yet we still have people that click on the bloody link. I don't get it. But anyway, it is what it is, I suppose. So to that end, again, thank you everybody for joining us. Please let the questions keep flowing. I mean, this session will be open in your team's environment for a short while yet. And then it will automatically close down, part of our policy. So yeah, and then we'll share recordings, I'm pretty certain. And please join us for the next session. The next session, we're going to talk a little bit around Operator Connect. It's a request from management that we talk to you a little bit around that. So look forward to that in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll do a little short break so it gives everybody a chance to recover. And then we'll take it from there. So thank you very, very much. Enjoy your afternoon. Keep well.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.
MFA, educate. Goodbye.
Great. Thanks, everybody.